Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto becomes the Boromir's son? Huge shout out to GamesRMine for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Naruto hated the fact that Konoha's population ignored him and he paid way too much for some goods due to their antipathy towards him. There were some nice people that he enjoyed being around, like the old man and his favorite raiment stand, but generally it sucked. He let out a sigh as he sat on a bench in the middle of town. He knew that things had to get better because the old man said it would, and he would never leave, or would he? Unbeknownst to the young demon host, a man with ill thoughts hid in the shadows of a nearby building and watched a boy, following him with grim intentions. Mizuki knew that Naruto would be walking home alone, and so this would be the perfect time to rid Konoha of the demon. He blustered himself up with alcohol to make sure he would not let his fear of the Hokage get the better of him this time. The deranged man made his way quietly, even though he was drunk, towards the unknowing demon host, pulled out his tanto, and prepared to strike. A small scraping sound behind him alerted Naruto to the impending attack. He turned to see a ninja with a mad gleam in his eyes, thrust a gleaming blade toward into Naruto's chest. Luckily for Naruto, the blade missed his heart, probably due to effect of copious amounts of alcohol, but the blade punctured his lung and began bleeding profusely. The QB roared in its cage. "I will not be killed by some drunken ninja. I will kill himself first." The fox knew of another way. He summoned all his chakra and threw both the assailant and his vessel into another world. An older world. Mizuki was too drunk to notice the change of scenery to an old forest. Normally a ninja of Mizuki's standard would notice this, drunk or not. However, he was not only drunk, but lived in a village that was hidden in the leaves, which was surrounded by a mighty forest on all sides, making it feel as if the woods were as natural as the village itself to be in. Mizuki was about to push the blade deeper into Naruto when he had a dark thought. Why not mess with the young demon host's mind? He thought. Mizuki had a cruel smirk on his lips as he spoke. "Naruto, do you know how your mother, father, or your older sister died?" Mizuki had all of Naruto's attention even though the pain as Mizuki skillfully spun a web of lies. Truthfully, he knew nothing of Naruto's family. "I killed them, that's right. I killed your father and had my way with your mother and sister before I cut their throats. The best part, I see, get to end the last of your family with you. Now die." Mizuki let go of his tanto and reached for the katana on his back. Boromir was leading his men back from a victorious battle against the orcs of Mordor. He ordered his men to set up camp. After all, they needed the rest and he wanted to do some scouting. Even though they were in Gondor, he needed to keep in practice, and this would help. Boromir heard a sound and made his way towards it. What he found shocked and angered him to the core. There stood a man with a knife stabbing into a child probably no older than 4 years old. Then he heard the man tell the poor boy the fate of his family at the man's hand. Boromir could not stand it any longer and with a loud war cry, he charged the orc of a man. Hearing this, the man turned to face him and Boromir slammed his shield into the man's chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Boromir stabbed his sword into the man's torso. The man coughed up some blood and tried to say something, but Boromir would be damned if he let this man's mouth spew more venom. He struck down again with his blade, silencing the man forever, then turned towards the young boy. Boromir walked over to the boy, then knelt in front of him. He could clearly see the boy's tears flow freely and knew that the boy was nearly broken. "Child, my name is Boromir. I will take you to get some medical help at my camp." Boromir spoke in soft tones, hoping against hope that the boy would not be too traumatized to trust anyone. "That thing," Boromir spat out like it was a curse and pointed to the corpse of Mizuki before continuing, "will no longer hurt you. I am sorry for not being there faster and for what that thing did to your family, but I swear that I will help you on my honor as a captain of Gondor." As Boromir spoke, he truly believed that it was his fault that the boy had lost so much. He was supposed to be the protector of Gondor. While he knew in his head that it sounded unreasonable that he would blame himself, in his heart he had a voice saying that if he only had done anything faster that the boy might be better. Naruto looked at Boromir though tear-bleared eyes. The man had long brown hair and a full beard and he had a kind look in his eyes. Boromir wore plate armor that had a symbol of a white tree on the chest. Naruto did the only thing he could do. He hugged the man for all his life before falling into a faint brought on by blood loss, dimly aware that the man caught him as he fell. Boromir was surprised when the boy hugged him with all the strength he had left. That was not cried out of him by that thing. He refused to call that thing a man. But when the boy hugged him, he knew what he had to do. He would become the father that was stolen from the boy by that monster, but first he had to check the boy's wounds. Boromir lifted up the boy's shirt to see the wound, but shock overcame him. "By the gods!" Boromir exclaimed as he watched the boy's wounds close up on their own. It would appear that the boy is blessed by the gods, probably as a way to say they're sorry for the poor lad. Boromir thought to himself as he removed his cape and gently wrapped the boy while picking him up. Then Boromir with the boy in his arms begin the trek back to camp. Faramir waited his brother's return with clear weariness on his face. He feared an orc ambush and wished again that he had gone with Boromir. Sternly he reminded himself that had an ambush taken place, they would have heard the horn of Gondor bellow. Faramir sighed. He had no idea what was taking his brother so long to return from a simple scouting mission inside Gondor. Just as he was about to order a search party, he saw his brother in the distance in full armor carrying something wrapped in his arms with what appeared to be his cape. Faramir's eyebrow rose in question as he walked over to his brother. "You are late, brother. What kept you? I presume that it is what is in your arms." "Yes, brother. You see, I found a man that was worse than any orc and I took care of him." Faramir had a slightly disbelieving look after this pronouncement. After all, men had a chance at redemption while orcs had none. Seeing the disbelief, Boromir resumed. "The man, if you can call it that, had stabbed this child in his right lung while bragging that he killed the boy's father and then raped the boy's mother and sister before killing them as well." Boromir watched as his brother's face showed stunned disbelief, only to be replaced by anger as he threw back Boromir's cape to show the face of a child no older than 4. At that age, a mother's embrace was all that was needed to make the world right, but if what he heard was true, then this boy's world would never be that again. The gods seem to have taken pity on him, and he can heal in seconds after the wound is inflicted. Boromir said sadly, as that ability alone made the boy destined to be a soldier. Boromir spoke again, this time with a personal hint to his voice. "If only I had paid as much attention to what happens in our borders as I did to the orcs, he could have saved them." Faramir shook his head at his brother, knowing that this abomination was not his brother's fault. He was trying to convey that to his beloved brother. "Boromir, it is not your." When he was cut off by the look his brother sent him. "I swore to protect Gondor, yet I become so blinded by the mortar that I failed to see this act going on." Boromir exclaimed angrily, more to himself than his brother. "So I shall make amends and take this boy as my son." Boromir said this with pride and even a little possessiveness in the final word, his words seemingly carrying themselves throughout the camp as soldiers listened to the brothers' conversation. Boromir walked by his gape-mouthed brother, who had yet to comprehend what he had said. Boromir entered his tent and laid the boy on his bunk. Faramir recovered enough from his brother's statement to follow Boromir into the relative privacy of the tent. "Are you sure you want to go ahead with this?" Faramir questioned. Boromir turned to face his brother. "Yes, I do intend to follow this course." Faramir looked at his brother's face to see if he would change his mind. When no facial expressions changed, Faramir smiled. "Good. The boy needs a father and not a man to give him hope only to have it stricken away." Boromir looked shocked as he heard Faramir continue. "But how are you going to explain this to father?" Boromir looked thoughtful before simply replying, "Tell him the truth." Faramir stared at Boromir a long moment before shrugging. After all, Boromir was their father's favorite son, so if father was going to not make a fuss, it would be for Boromir. Faramir sighed. He had to stop thinking like that. His brother was the kindest person to him, and those thoughts did no one any good. He turned to study the boy on the cot. Things were about to get complicated. Naruto's eyes blinked open. Studying the ceiling, he realized he was in a plain tent. Glancing down at the cot he was on, he sat up and looked hopefully around for his savior. He was not disappointed as he saw Boromir over in the corner, sleeping on what looked like a fold-up chair. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized that Boromir had given him his bed. Getting up, Naruto walked over to where Boromir rested and sank down cross-legged in front of the man, waiting for him to wake up. Boromir woke up to the sight of the boy he saved looking up at him from where he sat on the floor. Boromir noted that when he returned the look, the boy's eyes brightened and Boromir could not help but smile. "Well, look who's woken up. What is your name, lad?" Boromir asked his unknowing son. Naruto stared into the man's eyes for a moment before saying, "My name is Naruto, sir." Naruto was slightly nervous at telling his name as it seemed to be hated by adults. Boromir saw the nervous look, but reasoned that the boy was nearly killed. Still, he had to wonder why anyone would name their son Naruto. "I must ask, do you know who named you?" Boromir requested respectfully. After all, it is not every day that you meet someone with such a unique name. "I think it was the lady at the orphanage. She used to talk about my parents and say they were heroes, but she never said their names." Naruto spoke without missing a beat. He was so happy that Boromir did not hate him. Boromir was thinking that the woman at the orphanage had to be a foreigner, but a name is a name. "Naruto, I am sorry for what has happened, and I am going to make amends." Boromir spoke in a soft tone while moving to Naruto's eye level. "I am going to take you as my son." Boromir trailed off as if he wanted to say more, but he was interrupted by Naruto's arms clinging tightly around his neck. Naruto wept with joy. He finally had a father, but then he remembered Mizuki's words. "I would like that, but do you think I am betraying my birth parents?" Naruto questioned with some worry while looking worriedly into Boromir's eyes. Boromir looked at the boy. know his son, before answering I think they would want what is best for you and would not want you to dwell on such depressing matters. Boromir spoke quietly, but with authority. He was by all means a simple Mana soldier, so common sense and pride were some of his best characteristics. Come Naruto, let's introduce you to my brother. Boromir helped Naruto up and lent him a hand to hold as Boromir lead Naruto through the camp to find Faramir. As usual, he was leaning against a tree blending in so well that it was hard to pick him out. Faramir. Boromir called out. Faramir, hearing his brother's call, turned to see his brother and the boy coming towards him. He noticed that Boromir's hand was wrapped protectively around the boy's tiny one. Faramir took a moment to study the boy's blonde hair and what appeared to be 3 scars on each of the boy's cheeks. Faramir shook his head at the sight. He had seen weirder things after all. Hello my young friend, or should I say nephew. Faramir spoke first before continuing. My name is Faramir. May I ask what your name is? Boromir spoke before Naruto could open his mouth. His name is Naruto. It is the name that was given to him at an orphanage. Boromir spoke as if the name was a perfectly normal name and the fact that it was given by an orphanage when normally a father gives their sons a name was no big deal. Faramir suspected that the boy might not have been originally from Gondor, but for his brother's sake, he would not say a word of his suspicions, besides he was sure his father would no doubt believe his eldest son's version. Even if it was shown that the boy did not know Gondor. The trip back to Gondor was a very interesting one to say the least. Boromir carved a rough sword out of a branch and gave it to Naruto, then started to show him how to fight with it. To Boromir's great delight, Naruto was a natural at it. Faramir helped the boy now and again, but did not with the same enthusiasm as his brother. The men that had gone with them all enjoyed Naruto's presence. It lifted their spirits for the long march back to Gondor. Before long, the White City was in view. Naruto could only gape at the size and beauty. Boromir was frowning slightly, thinking of the best way to introduce Naruto to his father. Hand in hand, they approached the city gate. Boromir studied Naruto as Naruto stared at the White City in the distance. Smiling to himself, Boromir chuckled softly thinking that Naruto must have came from an outpost, since this was definitely his first sight of the White City. Boromir tapped Naruto's shoulder to draw his attention before speaking. Son, soon we will be greeted by the people of Gondor, who are coming to celebrate the victory over the forces of Mordor. As such, we will be cheered upon entry to the city. So you do not get lost in the bedlam, you will be riding with me. Boromir had another reason to do this. He was going to show Gondor his new son who had come to him after the victory. Naruto's smile was so large that it threatened to split his face in two. Faramir was riding his own horse a short ways behind them. He had the reins in one hand and was using the other to lead Boromir's mount over. Boromir, I think that we should get our men cleaned up before we go any further. Faramir spoke neutrally, although his tone held a double meaning by which Boromir knew that he wanted to talk. Boromir turned to his officers and yelled out everyone. Before we enter Minas Tirith, we will bath and clean our armor and weapons. Jostling each other in a good humor to be so close to home, the men started to gather up their gear and head towards the nearby river to bathe. Faramir turned to one of his rangers before speaking. Dagorier, come here a moment. I know you have a son, so please take young Naruto here to get cleaned up while I have a talk with my brother. The ranger now identified as Dagorier walked over to Naruto with a smile and held out his hand. Boromir nodded his permission to Naruto and the two walked off. Faramir turned to Boromir, steadied himself and took a deep breath. What are you thinking? Faramir all but yelled once Naruto was out of earshot. There is no way that he will be used to what your plan, and it may very well overwhelm him. Boromir looked at Faramir strangely and without comprehension. What are you talking about? We will just be going through the gates. Boromir asked with his confusion evident in his voice. This is the perfect way to show Gondor's strength and honor. Boromir's voice was laced with pride, seeing no reason that anyone would be overwhelmed by a raucous victory greeting. Faramir looked at his brother in disbelief, thinking how could he not think? Oh wait, he was raised with this as a common thing. Perhaps he wouldn't see it. Faramir lightly smacked his head. Then at least watch him closely. He's grown up in an orphanage so far. I doubt that any experiences there would have prepared him to handle a Gondor victory celebration. The crowd alone could overwhelm the boy. Faramir spoke in a tone that suggested that this was obvious to everyone. Boromir just looked at Faramir questioningly. He was starting to have had enough of this conversation. Come brother, let's get cleaned up and show all the world Gondor's finest when we ride through the gates. Boromir then turned and headed off towards the river. Faramir watched him leave, shaking his head at Boromir's lack of understanding. He just knew that this would end badly for Naruto. The child obviously had come from a small village and would be entirely unprepared for Minas Tirith. Sighing in defeat, Faramir then followed his brother to the river. Now the only reason why he was going through the main gates with his brother was to back him up when their father came to greet them. No Boromir. Faramir let out another sigh at the thought. Then he cleared his mind of the ugliness of that thought and instead started to remember how Boromir treated him instead of his father. After cleaning up and shining their armor, the men mounted their horses, all but Naruto, who Boromir picked up and placed on the horse in front of him. Settling in behind Naruto, Boromir guided his horse to the front, ready to lead his men through the gates. Faramir noticed that Boromir was going to be in the front with Naruto. He wiped his face tiredly. He was right, this would be trouble. The boy was just not ready to face a raucous Gondor crowd hyped up on a victory. Faramir knew that it was his brother's upbringing. He might be a simple man, but he was used to being greeted after a major victory by a celebration from his people. Faramir could only hope that Naruto would have less trouble than he thought. Naruto was excited. He was going into Minas Tirith with his father. Sure, the saddle was uncomfortable, but then again this was his first time in a saddle. Naruto did not know what to expect and looked around a little anxiously. His father had said something about people cheering the troops. Naruto moved a little further back against his father as they rode up to where the massive ornate gates were swinging open. That was when he saw the crowd of people cheering and straining to see the men with worried looks as they searched for their loved one. Naruto began to feel uncomfortable when he heard people talking. Who is that kid with Lord Boromir? And what is that kid doing there? And did the orcs attack children and Lord Boromir saved one? That and more along the same vein was what Naruto heard coming from the crowd. Faramir saw Naruto's nervousness and decided to help him out as he quickly moved towards his brother through the crowd. Boromir, I think that our father would want to report as quickly as possible, so perhaps you could order the men to spend time with their families as we travel to the tower. Faramir asked it like it was a question, for if he had worded it in a statement he was sure the response would have been, come on Faramir, lighten up. Look around, find a lass to woo, and have fun. Drink some ale. After all, this is a victory. Faramir then spoke again. Also, the sooner you tell father about Naruto, the sooner you can get to know your son. This part was whispered to Boromir, knowing that Boromir would see this as a chance to make up for his mistake. Boromir realized Faramir was right. He should talk to his father, but how to get the crowd quiet enough to hear him? That's it. Thought Boromir, excitedly as he pulled the horn of Gondor from his belt and blew a short blast. All of a sudden the crowd stopped talking as Boromir yelled out. Men and women of Gondor, we have come from a great victory today, so I am ordering all my men to spend the day with their friends and loved ones, while Faramir and myself see my father. The cheers came louder as a way was parted though to allow both brothers and Naruto to get to the tower. Boromir and Faramir were rushing their horses to get to the tower for two different reasons. Boromir because he wanted to introduce Naruto to his father, and Faramir to make sure Boromir did nothing rash. Denethor was eagerly awaiting his son's return. He had heard that the victory was one of the best lately with near non-existent losses, and that he could proudly say was due to his son Boromir's leadership. So when he heard both his sons were coming, he decided on a big welcome. Denethor saw his sons enter, but it was strange his son Boromir was leading a blonde child. The brothers stopped before their father and bowed. Naruto, seeing this, followed suit. Denethor looked over the three before turning to face Boromir. Boromir. Who is this boy you have brought before me? An apprentice perhaps? Denethor decided that it must be Boromir's apprentice. If it was, he would make sure the boy became one of Gondor's finest. Boromir looked directly at his father for a moment before speaking. Naruto is not my apprentice. After the battle I decided to scout out the surrounding area. I saw a man trying to kill the boy and overheard the man tell how he had killed Naruto's birth parents and older sister and how he had raped both the boy's mother and sister. It is my duty to protect Gondor, yet I let this happen through my relentless focus on outward enemies, so I took Naruto as my son. Boromir's voice rang out throughout the throne room, startling the nobles and his father, Denethor. Faramir just sighed. He knew that Boromir spoke rashly, that was one of his qualities, but he spoke straight to the truth. But he could have told father alone. Faramir thought, sighing, as he shook his head. Boromir continued his talk, running over the sudden buzzing conversation in the hall. Naruto has also been blessed by the gods for his misfortune. They have deemed that he should heal very quickly. The nobles were looking at each other, the ones with young daughters, already thinking that they should introduce them to position their daughters to wed royalty. The nobles with sons were also thinking about introducing them so as to set up a lifetime friendship and the attendant political power that friendship would accrue their family. Denethor stared at Boromir in consternation. He then looked over Naruto. The boy was uncomfortable. Denethor reminded himself that he could not blame the boy, but he hated the fact that some unknown kid would become his grandson. If you're sure, son, then do what you feel is best. Denethor said to Boromir, but he vowed he would keep an eye on the boy. After all, one could not be too careful. Now go make sure Naruto is dressed appropriately to be the second in line for the stewardship of Gondor. Denethor really just wanted Naruto out of his sight for the moment so he could consider this new development. Faramir released his held breath. Well, he told himself, that could have gone much worse. Faramir was getting the strange feeling that his father was warming up to Naruto, or rather what he saw as a younger blonde Boromir. Faramir remembered how that started very well indeed. Flashback. Boromir was training Naruto in the art of the sword and shield in a courtyard at Minas Tirith, while Faramir was reading under a tree nearby, while tossing the occasional comment their way. Boromir had been using the drill methods they teach Gondor in Elite, as though it were a game with Naruto. Naruto for his part was a natural at this, though he needed to work on his footing more. "Naruto, you are doing well. I am proud of you, but we should stop for today." Boromir spoke as he was clearly impressed with his son's growth rate and skill. Boromir knew that Naruto would become one of the best there was in Gondor. He could feel it in every fiber of his being. Come on, I'm not tired. Just one more time." Naruto begged as he truly enjoyed this training. Naruto was a little antisocial. He did not get along well with the children from other noble families, as they were not the rough and tumble kind that he was. Boromir laughed at Naruto's begging. "Naruto, there is more to life than training, though I agree that we should try and do it more often." Ever since Boromir had adopted Naruto, he had been paying close attention to Gondor's people. Boromir took back lands that were lost and strengthened the country's hold on them. He was slowly reversing the progression of decay that Gondor had been going through since the death of the kings. Boromir also spent a lot of time around Naruto, taking him with him wherever he could, even on campaign trails, despite the protest of the nobles and to a lesser extent, his brother. Unbeknownst to Boromir and Naruto, Denethor was watching them, but he was not seeing what most would see. Denethor was having a flashback to when Boromir spoke the same exact words that Naruto had used. Denethor no longer saw a blonde kid that Boromir had taken in out of Pitino, he saw a young little Boromir in Naruto's place. Faramir was much more observant than his brother and nephew. He saw his father as soon as the man had stepped into the courtyard. Faramir noticed that his father was looking at Naruto intently, almost as if he were Boromir. Faramir realized at that moment what was happening, that his father saw Naruto as a younger Boromir. Faramir sighed as he went back to his book. He also made a mental note to watch how this was going to play out. Flashback end. After that day, Denethor had taken to the role of grandfather very quickly, maybe too quickly, as it seemed he did a 180 in his opinion of Naruto. Boromir had not noticed the change, but he was a little mad that his father made him stop taking Naruto out into dangerous territory. Denethor had also started to teach Naruto how to use a shield and spear while Boromir was away. For Naruto this was totally new but welcome. He had a family now, though he needed to make some friends. Naruto was wearing a tunic with a white tree on the front and back, he also wore black pants. He was always trailed by 2 citadel guards by the order of Denethor. At the time he was wandering the streets of Minas Tirith. Naruto was always in awe of his new home. It was beautiful and it had nearly everything. Naruto was sure that this was one of the best places in the world. "Hey, get back here, brats." Naruto heard someone shout. For a moment he thought they were talking about him, but that thought was soon dispelled as he saw a boy his age turning the corner in front of him, holding a younger girl's hand tightly as they ran. They appeared to be siblings, with a strong familiar appearance. Unfortunately for the pair, the turn they took was directly in front of Naruto. They ended up colliding with him. The guards are watching the newcomers carefully for any sign of threat to the young lord. Naruto and the boy got up at the same time. The boy saw that Naruto was kind of in shock. He could tell by the way Naruto was dressed that he was a noble's son, and the fact that there were 2 armored soldiers staring at him made him think Naruto was the son of an important noble. Naruto could tell the boy was nervous. He had dirty black hair and was wearing ragtag clothes. His sister was no better. Naruto also noticed a loaf of bread tucked under the boy's arm. Ducking their heads, the pair began to sidle away. Just as Naruto was about to speak, a large man came running towards the group. "I got you now, you damn thieves," the large man exclaimed. He came to a stop in front of the group and failed to notice the guards or the way Naruto was dressed. "So you brats went to meet your partner, huh? Well, I'll make sure you don't steal from me again." The man took a threatening step forward, only to be blocked by the 2 citadel guards, both with a hand on their hilt. The man, seeing this, looked down at the new boy and realized that this was the kid Lord Boromir had proclaimed his son. "I've done it now," the man thought. "Look, those brats stole bread for my shop and they need to be punished." The man, eyes wide, tried to explain to the guards, but as he took a step closer the guards once again blocked his path. Naruto looked at the kids, then to the man. "How much?" Naruto asked simply, he was allowed a stipend. The man looked dumbly at Naruto before replying, "What?" Naruto sighed heavily. "How much for the loaf?" Naruto asked as if it was the simplest thing in the world. Well, most of the crowd that had been drawing only gaped at the sight. "Here. Would this do?" Naruto questioned as he handed over a reasonable amount of his money to the man. Of course the man accepted and bowed before running off, money clutched tightly in his fist and his heart pounding. Naruto then turned to the 2 stunned street orphans. "What do you want to be when you grow up? What are your names?" That took both of them by surprise. Why would a noble's son want to know anything about them? Finally the boy spoke. My name Boromir and I want to be a ranger. The boy spoke the last part quietly as he was nervous. And this is my sister Celebrenal, she is not really a talker, but I knew she wants to be a healer. Naruto looked at the two before an idea popped up in his head. Are there many orphans like you? The pair looked at each other before the boy spoke up with a simple yes. Well then, maybe I could talk to Grandpa into starting up a program for orphans to become apprentices. The two guards shared a look of disbelief. The plan the boy had came up with was so simple. Yet no one else had seen it. It would not only solve Gondor's orphan problem, but also increase the population in specialized fields. But they both realized Denethor would have to agree to it. And that was by no means a sure thing. Naruto seemed to think about it before speaking. You know what? Let's go see Grandpa now. Come with me, you two. Naruto spoke to the two orphans and they followed him, not knowing what else to do. The two guards looked at Naruto in mingled surprise and disbelief. He would bring Thessa children in front of Lord Denethor. Boromir and his sister Celebrenal did not know what was going on. 1 second they were out on the streets, the next walking into the White Tower. That meant that Naruto was the son of a very important noble and he may just be able to pull off his plan. Their hope lasted until they saw Lord Denethor rise from his throne and greet Naruto with his usual "How's my favorite grandchild" thing. Then they trembled as they realized that life had just changed for them forever, either for good or ill. Denethor was less than pleased when his grandson brought these two children to his courtroom, but he listened to Naruto's plan. Thinking it through, Denethor was amazed by the idea. His grandchild was a genius, he decided. He nodded to himself. He was sure that he could not have asked for a more perfect grandson. He quickly amended to himself. Denethor decided to add a rule to Naruto's idea. He would give the title Master of Craft only if the proposed master agreed to train at least 2 apprentices. That would ensure city artisans would accept the orphans. He looked back to Naruto's gray eyes. No blue eyes. How silly of me, he thought. Gray is Boromir's eye color. Naruto does kind of look like Boromir. Denethor decided, mentioning it to a nearby courtier who stared at Naruto trying and failing to see even the smallest resemblance. A pleased smile spread across Naruto's face at his grandfather's pronouncement. His grandfather liked his idea, so that meant he had a training partner and perhaps also a friend. Naruto turned to his granddad. Can I go out training with Boromir? He wants to be a ranger, so he would have to learn to use a sword. Besides, it would be fun to spar against someone my height. Denethor was lost in thought looking at Naruto and seeing young Boromir. Shaking himself out of his reverie, he realized Naruto had spoken. Thinking back, he recalled his words. Smiling, he nodded. Of course you can, Boromir, Naruto, but take them to get the Turklothing and perhaps also a bath. Watching Naruto leave the hall, Denethor reflected that he had always loved that fighting spirit in his son Boromir's in Naruto, he reminded himself hastily. Denethor also had another reason he was allowing Naruto to be friends with this commoner. It would drive the nobles mad. It was enough to bring another smile to Denethor's face. Back on the campaign trail, Boromir wished he could have brought his son with him. He missed Naruto, but supposed his father had a point. It was dangerous, even with precautions. Straightening up in his saddle, he waved the men forward. They were about to attack an orc outpost. Moving forward stealthily, came close to the camp. There was still no sign the orcs had noticed them. Dismounting, Boromir unsheathed his sword and motioned the men forward again. They entered the camp and discovered that the orcs were dead. He ordered his men to search the camp. As he began to look around himself, he found something that he did not expect: a wounded rider of Rohan. Boromir knelt down by the man. Opening his eyes, the man gasped, "So a son of Gondor has finally come." He coughed weakly, blood speckling his lips. "My party attacked this orc encampment earlier today. We were successful, but when orc reinforcements arrived, my men were forced to flee with the orcs in hot pursuit." Turning his head, the soldier coughed up bright red blood, a signal to Boromir the man was beyond their help. "I have a message to deliver to Lord Denethor in my jacket." "It is essential," the man's voice trailed off. His eyes pled with Boromir, but then turned milky as death claimed him. Boromir gently closed the soldier's eyes, then opened his jacket. As stated, there was a message scroll tucked into an inside pocket. He read it quickly, frowned, then read it again more slowly this time. Shaking his head, he turned sharply to his men. "We make for Minas Tirith as fast as we can." Naruto smiled happily at his friend, Boromir, from across the sparring circle. The pair were circling each other. In their hands were wooden swords, but Naruto also had a wooden shield. Boromir lunged forward with a straight jab with his left hand. Naruto blocked with his shield while pushing his friend's wooden blade to the left. Naruto also swung his sword in a method that would take the opponent's head if it had been real combat. Boromir ducked the swing and rolled around to get behind Naruto, trying to take out his legs. Naruto smirked as he realized what his friend was trying to do had been practicing a new counter move. Boromir saw Naruto's legs shift, then out of nowhere Naruto performed a roundhouse kick, catching Boromir by surprise as the kick connected with his chest. Naruto saw Boromir fall to the ground. Naruto took advantage and used his shield to bat Boromir's wooden sword away, while positioned his own sword at his friend's neck. "Looks like I win again," Naruto stated as he removed his sword from his friend's neck. "But, you have really improved." Naruto smiled while he holding out his hand for his friend to grasp. Boromir shook his head, grabbing Naruto's hand, letting Naruto help him to his feet. "One of these days my friend I will be able to beat you." Boromir chuckled as he looked at his friend and the nephew of his master. Boromir and Naruto turned as they heard someone walking towards them. "Well, what a surprise, the warrior wins again." The comment came from a boy around their own age. The boy had on a tunic with the Rohin's white horse embroidered on the front. The boy had long blonde hair that had beads in it. His name was Ceolwulf. He was a transfer noble's son. Gondor and Rohin would trade noblemen's sons for a few years so as to keep relationships solid between the two nations. The trade had not been done in many years, but Boromir had proposed that they start up again, and his efforts ended up with Ceolwulf coming to Gondor. "Well, that is true, my friend. Boromir has yet to beat me, but neither have you," Naruto says while he noticed Borunickel's smirk and Ceolwulf's scowl. Celebrennel, who was waiting watching her brother and secret crush spar, intervened before there could be a fight. "Please calm down, you guys had a long spar and Ceolwulf did just come from a long lancing practice." Celebrennel noticed Naruto and the group look her way and she blushed slightly when she looked back at Naruto. Naruto noticed the slightly red cheeks and decided that something was wrong. "Hey Celebrennel. Are you sick? Because your cheeks are really red," Naruto asked with innocent concern while Boromir and Ceolwulf tried to cover up their amusement. They were not completely tense in the situations, unlike Naruto. Celebrennel looked aghast at Naruto before stating in a strangled voice that she was fine. However, Naruto did not believe it for a moment. Walking up to her, he placed his hand on her forehead. Celebrennel felt her face heat up even more from the contact and attention. "Really, you are burning up. I better get you to your master." Naruto practically dragged her by the arm to the healer's chamber. "I think Celebrennel is sick," he announced. "She is all red and really warm," Naruto told Celebrennel's master. Celebrennel looked at her apprentice with a knowing smile before speaking. "Don't worry, young lord. She will be fine after a moment's rest. Now, run along," he said as she pushed Naruto out the door. She then turned to Celebrennel. "Someday you will have to tell him how you feel." Celebrennel nodded weakly. "Okay, this is a little short, but it is just setting up before the time skip to their teen years and the War of the Ring." The White Tower was in an unusual state of disarray due to the arrival of an elf messenger. The nobles of the clans of Gondor were having some trouble preparing for their unique guest. The tower was in disarray mainly due to the fact that the old heirs were there. But Lord Denethor was adamant that this meeting take place. So he called all the staff he could find to prepare the elf. At the same time Naruto was preparing for the event in another area. He wore traditional Gondor armor, the white tree surmounted by 7 silver stars blazing on his chest plate, a display of his loyalty to his home nation. The shining greaves adorning his legs were well polished and pristine. The red cape hung gallantly from his right shoulder, swaying every so often in the breeze of his movements. He walked proudly, his steps showing his confidence in what he was doing. More precisely what he planned to do. Naruto knew what he had to do. His father Boromir and his uncle Faramir were serving Gondor. Naruto knew he had to do something, had to make them proud. As he opened the door to the grand hall, all the nobles turned to see the newcomer and fell silent. Lord Denethor wondered what was going on and why his youngest heir to the throne had decided to make an appearance, but quickly turned his attention back to the elf messenger. "I couldn't say my part. I was told why the elf messenger was sent. Boromir is not here and so cannot take part in this quest. But I can." Naruto spoke with such clarity and authority that no one in the whole room spoke against him. Denethor was shocked. He never thought that Naruto would ever want to join this quest, yet had been planning a very special surprise in regards to his own squad, but maybe Naruto would be able to assist better here. The once great steward bowed his head and spoke. "Very well, it shall be as you wish." His voice held out his disappointment, but he knew better than to argue. Naruto was so much like his poor Mother grandmother that he knew it would be useless. Naruto nodded, having won the battle of wills, and went off to pack, making sure to grab his favorite shield and sword, along with a spear that was given as a present by a local blacksmith for his help in the apprentice issue. Glancing around, he satisfied himself that he was well armed for the task. Naruto then turned around and made his way to the door, knowing that he had secured his place in the quest and unknowingly changed the fate of Middle-earth. Naruto quickly walked to his room and sat down on the bed to think about what he would say to the others. He knew that if Gondor was called to this council meeting, that was only a matter of time before the others were as well. The next day Naruto had to leave early in the morning. He did not want to see any of his friends for fear that they might try to stop him. Quickly he made it to the stables with all his bags balanced and secured on his horse, which had been a gift to him from Rohan. Just then he heard a pounding and turned to see a large black dog standing a few yards from the stables. It was about chest height and was very thick with a head like a bulldog, but much bigger. Gondor had once used half-warg wolves to breed this canine. They were called the dogs of war as they had no other purpose. They were very intelligent, but they only had one master. They would listen to no one else. For some reason their life was tied into their masters, so that when the master died, the dog followed in death soon after. In fact, legend states that they would go to hell just to bring back their master to their side. Only the most wealthy of nobles could afford them. Naruto bent down to greet the great hound. He actually rubbed his head behind his ears. "I knew I would not be able to get rid of you that easy, so boy, are you up for the trip?" The dog's affirmative bark and his stance by the loaded stallion showed that he would not let his master go alone. He would make sure to follow to the ends of the earth if necessary. "Well, come on boy, Rivendellsp, waits," Naruto said with confidence in his voice as he mounted his horse. He rode out the stables unknowing that his journey would take a turn for the worse shortly thereafter, for the Eye of Sauron was ever vigilant and had managed to see the new threat. However, the Eye did not believe that the threat was great enough to warrant his attention, so he went back to his search for the One Ring. Naruto knew he would have trouble on the road to Rivendell, but he never knew how much. He figured a few bandits, but he did not expect to ride into the middle of a full-blown battle between the dwarves and the orcs. Naruto allowed a small smile to pass his face as he drew his sword and charged at full gallop towards the marauding orcs, his faithful hound beside him running with drool hanging out of his mouth. As Naruto's steed crashed into the line of orcs with terrible force, crushing many under hoof while breaking their ranks, allowing the dwarf line to push through the opening. He hacked viciously at the orcs surrounding him on all sides, making sure he had hit vitals, even while swinging swiftly. His blade was running with blood as he quickly turned his steed and impaled the closest orc with his sword. The faithful hound was having its own fun as it tackled the biggest orc it could find and viciously tore at its unprotected throat. The battle was quick but bitter. Naruto did not have any injuries, and neither did his hound, so as far as he was concerned it could not have gone better. The commander of the dwarfs approached, his stride was one of experience, telling of untold battles. "Lad, we appreciate your help, but can you tell us of what business does a man have here?" The stout dwarf said with a voice that was mistrustful at best and downright suspicious at worst. "I'm on my way to Rivendell, saw that you were under attack and decided to help." Naruto finished with a smile as he nudged his mount closer to the dwarf. "Though you can thank me for the help later." Naruto seemed to have an afterthought as he spoke. He knew that this was going to be one great day after all. He was already on the road to Rivendell, so he might as well try to make a few allies on the way. Waving merrily, he left the dwarfs behind and followed the road into a nearby forest. Naruto sighed as he rode through the winding forest. The trees almost seemed alive, the air had an unnatural quality to it. He knew that he was getting closer after all. This place seemed to be enchanted. He heard some birds calling, but they didn't sound natural at all. In fact, it sounded more like a code. He quickly turned around to find that he was facing an elf wearing golden armor with an equally expensive looking bow aimed at his head. "Why are you here, child of man?" The elf's voice was smooth, showing years of experience and wisdom. "I am on my way to Rivendell. Would you be so kind, sir, as to show me the rest of the path?" Naruto spoke in a calm voice, never once taking his eye off the arrow. Though he was closely listening for any other threats, he knew as soon as he said Rivendell that he would most likely pass. The elf seemed to nod at this as he spoke. "I thought so. You wouldn't happen to be Naruto, would you?" Naruto gave a single nod of his head. "Good. Then follow me, Lord Elrin is expecting you." Naruto followed the elf through the forest. It seemed to melt away and then suddenly they were at Rivendell. What he saw took his breath away. Beautiful trees growing all around the city, seemingly intact from before time began. The city itself fronted gorgeous waterfalls, glistening brightly in the sun. They gently rode down the path, letting all know that peace was evident with nature in this spot. Naruto could not help but smile at the glorious sight. The elf turned with a knowing smile of his own. "First time seeing the beauty of Rivendell, isn't it? Everyone reacts the same, even the elves themselves do so." He stated this as if it is a matter of fact, one that Naruto did not dispute. A few days after arriving in Rivendell, Naruto walked through the elven city, admiring the beauty of it in all its entirety. In this place nature and men, well, elves, were at peace. Elegant archways rose gracefully overhead with torches gently lighting the path, giving the city a surreal feel. Naruto paused to look at a bubbling fountain with a bronze maiden rising from the middle. He was amazed that the elves had managed to carve such beauty into it, like the very soul of the artist worked on it. Rivendell has that kind of effect on those that are new. Naruto heard a voice behind him say. Startled that someone had come that close without him realizing, Naruto looked over his shoulder to see a tall man wearing a dark nondescript tunic and trousers. The man's hair was also dark colored and he looked like he had not shaven in a while. His eyes, though, were piercing. I dose this place, it feels good to even stand here, but I miss my home in Minas Tirith. Naruto admitted as he looked at the man that was approaching. May I ask thy name, stranger? Naruto's soul seemed to flutter. He felt that the man next to him was destined for greatness, could feel it in every fiber of his being. My name is Aragorn, might I inquire as to your name as well? Aragorn asked. His tone was pleasant, but he had a bit of an accent that Naruto could not place. It was subtle, but there nonetheless. My name is Naruto, son of Boromir. Naruto introduced himself to Aragorn as he looked him straight in the eye. If I may be so bold as to ask, why are you here? Naruto questioned as he looked sharply at Aragorn. He was being polite while trying to satisfy his desire to know. I am here for the conceal as a ranger. Aragorn spoke, hiding the fact that he was really here because he was Isildur's son. Aragorn studied the man, nearly still a boy, with which he was having a conversation. The man's blonde hair was long, but strangely spiked in multiple places. He had the beginnings of a beard on his face that was lighter in 3 lines across each cheek. Aragorn noticed the man was dressed in a light brown tunic. You're a ranger, have you heard of my friend Boromir? Naruto asked the man to see if Aragorn knew of his friend, as they were both rangers. Sorry, but I am a ranger from the north. Aragorn calmly stated as he watched a small flicker of disappointment appear briefly in Naruto's eyes. So do you know what other races are present besides elves? Naruto asked as he knew there was some old rivalries between the free people of Middle-earth. All the free people are going to be represented. This is more important than petty rivalries. Aragorn spoke with clear authority in his voice. Naruto heard the tone of authority creep into the man's voice, and it automatically made him a little angry for being spoken to in such a tone. Naruto took a few calming breaths, reminding himself that the man was not from Gondor, but from the north, and he was a commander from the way he sounded. Look, Aragorn, Naruto said the man's name with a tiny amount of venom, I will give respect, but I wish it in return. Aragorn realized his mistake in trying to use his natural authority on Naruto, but it told Aragorn a lot about the man he was talking to. Aragorn now knew that Naruto was a high-ranking commander or general, due to the fact that he was not used to receiving orders. Very well, Naruto. I will see you later then. Aragorn spoke as he turned and headed down the path. Naruto looked at the fountain once more as he thought about the upcoming meeting. They were apparently waiting for a person called Frodo to recover before they could start. Naruto then noticed that the sun was quite high in the sky. He could not believe how much time had passed while he was wandering the city and then talking to Aragorn. Naruto walked back the winding road he had followed until he returned to Elrond's palace. As Naruto drew near, he saw a strange sight in front of the palace. 3 boys. With large hairy feet. This is worthy of investigation. Naruto thought as he approached the 3. I am telling you, Mary, that Mr. Frodo will wake up soon. One of the 3 said. He was quite large in comparison to the other 2. Compared to Naruto, he was still child-sized. Sam, I think that Frodo will wake up next week. One of them spoke. Oh come on, Pippin, I bet you that Frodo will wake in a few days. Mary said as he looked at the one called Pippin. Mary, Pippin. There is someone coming. Sam spoke in a hushed tone. Aren't you 3 a little young to be by yourselves? Naruto asked the children as he looked down on them. He studied them and to his shock, their faces betrayed them to be older than their height suggested. We're not children, the one called Sam exclaimed angrily. We're hobbits. Sam frowned at the large blonde-haired man in front of him. Naruto looked strangely at them. He had never heard of hobbits before. He examined them closer before speaking again. Well, why don't you tell me exactly what a hobbit is over a nice meal? Naruto suggested. His suggestion was instantly accepted by the hobbits with amazing enthusiasm. Naruto and the 3 hobbits were sitting at a table in the dining hall. Naruto had just finished listening to Mary's story about how he had tricked his grandfather. Naruto's laughter echoed the hall. I can't believe you did that. Naruto yelled out in a joyous tone as he drank a foamy liquid. If I had done such a thing, my grandfather would have yelled so loud that all of Minas Tirith would have heard. Naruto blustered. Aye, but it is true, it is. Mary went on while drinking generously from his own mug. You should have seen his face. It was redder than any tomato. The group broke out in laughter again. Naruto looked at the group before his expression turned a tad serious. I have to ask. The hobbits seem like a very peaceful people, why are you in a council that will deal with war? Naruto's question had brought down the mood, but the hobbits nodded thoughtfully. Well, it is actually Mr. Frodo that helped the cause of the meeting. You will find out about that at the gathering, I think. Sam said as he looked into his cup, bemusedly seeing his reflection in the liquid. Sam began to think about the adventure that had led them to this place and the blade that had stabbed Frodo. Naruto noticed his look and spoke up. "You seem worried about your friend. Are you his bodyguard by any chance?" Sam mumbled something that Naruto could not hear. "Speak up, will you?" "I am his gardener." Sam spoke in a quiet tone. "So are you like the fake butler that my father introduced when I was younger that was actually my bodyguard?" Naruto asked, clearly not believing the gardener bit. "No, I was actually his gardener." Sam's voice went way down in scale of volume yet again. "Then this Frodo fellow is lucky to have you as a friend," Naruto calmly said as he looked at the group again, only to look away as they heard someone coming in. There walking into the hall was a figure that was taller than the hobbits, but shorter than Naruto. The short man-like thing had a long reddish beard that easily went to his chest. He was also very broad. The figure looked like he had just come from a long reindeer walk. It saw them and walked over. "Hi, my name is Gimli. It is nice to meet you," the dwarf said, eyeing their drinks meaningfully as he took a seat next to Naruto and held out his hand to shake. Naruto grasped the hand and gave it a good shake. It was nearly as large as his own, in spite of the creature being nearly half his size. "Well Gimli, I am Naruto, and these are Sam, Mary, and Pippin," Naruto introduced the group. Soon they were all drinking while listening to the hobbits' wild stories. "Heh, I bet I can outdrink you all," Gimli spoke in a challenging tone during a break in the story. "Oh. Well, I believe that we accept, don't you Mary?" Pippin asked Mary. "Of course, Pippin. No one can outdrink a hobbit," Mary replayed with a smirky smile as he looked over the group. "Leave me out of it. I'm going to check on Mr. Frodo," Sam, being the most responsible of the group, stated as he stood up and walked off. Naruto looked over the group once more before speaking up. "How about the losers have to pay for it all?" Naruto asked with a grin and a raised eyebrow, to which everyone agreed. Soon began one of the greatest drinking contests ever seen in the halls of Rivendell. After countless rounds, it was down to Gimli and Naruto. The hobbits were snoring under the table. "So how are you doing, Gimli?" Naruto questioned in a smug voice as he knew that for some reason alcohol had no effect on him. Good. Can it drink yo? And a time." Where Gimli's slurred words trailed off as he fell from his chair and landed on the floor with a loud thud. Naruto looked down at his fallen opponent with a smile before taking another sip from his cup. "Well cheers, mate," Naruto said as he stood up and left for his room. He passed down the winding corridors to the room the elves had provided for him. As he entered the room, he felt his dog pounce on him, knocking him to the ground. The dog's massive face was a few inches above his own. "I am glad to see you too, but get off." The massive beast complied as he leapt off Naruto. Naruto scratched behind the dog's ear as they walked to his bed. Stretching, Naruto removed his shirt and then laid on the bed, his head on the ridiculously soft pillow. Smiling again, he let sleep take him. Naruto was woken by his dog's resounding bark. He quickly turned to see an elf backing out the door. "My lord, the council will be today," the poor elf said quickly as he ran out of the room and away from the massive dog. Naruto sighed as he grabbed his armor and started to polish and clean it. Perfection was the only way to go. After cleaning his armor, Naruto then started on his sword and shield. When everything was strapped on and in its proper place, Naruto grabbed the final piece of his armor, his helmet, and placed it under his arm as he walked out the door, whistling for his dog to come with him. Naruto found out that most of the council was boring, right up until he saw Gimli get up and slam his axe on the golden ring on the table, only to be blasted across the room. Naruto stood up. "If we can't destroy the ring, then let's use it. Give it to Gondor and we will push Saurian to the edge of the world." Naruto had spoken for the first time when Aragorn stood up. "We can't use it. Only one can control it, and he sits on the throne of Mordor," Aragorn yelled, which resulted in chaos. The entire council broke out into arguments and threats. The arguments lasted till one small voice rang out from the crowd. "I'll take it." Everyone stopped their petty arguments and looked at the little hobbit who had made himself known. "I'll take the ring to Mordor, though I do not know the way." And after that, one by one the fellowship was formed till it was Naruto's turn to join. "The world rests in your hands," Naruto spoke to the small hobbit. "Gondor will see the ring destroyed." Naruto then joined the line that was forming. Elrin looked at the 9 standing in front of him. 9 walkers to counter the 9 ridders. "Very well, from now on you are the Fellowship of the Ring." Naruto looked over the fellowship as he sharpened his blade, his loyal dog at his side. Naruto glances up at the night sky, taking in all of the stars before turning his head to his sleeping companions. Naruto was slightly jealous of them at times like this, as he only needed at least 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night, so he was usually bored. Naruto did find out though that Gimli talked in his sleep. Naruto shuddered as he remembered Gimli talking about a fair maiden's beard and how fine it was. Naruto knew that the fellowship was tense at times. As he looked around, he noticed that another member was up. He saw a smile build, so he knew it was a Habitno. The question was which one. Naruto stood up and carefully put his sword in its sheath as he walked quietly to the hobbit. Naruto noticed that it was Frodo now. Naruto was worried as Frodo was the ring barrier and should not be away from the fellowship. Frodo, Naruto quietly said as he placed a hand on the hobbit's shoulder. Frodo could not sleep tonight, his mind was still buzzing with the whole fellowship thing. Frodo heard someone say his name and place a hand on his shoulder. Frodo freaked out a little as he teased ready to bolt till he looked up and saw it was only Naruto and his eyes were shining with concern. Frodo looked at Naruto before replaying, "I could not sleep." Naruto nodded and smiled shyly. "Yeah, they just don't get that, people like us just don't need a lot of sleep." Frodo looked at Naruto surprised as he had figured that Naruto just liked to guard things. "You see, I was given power by the gods which made me recover faster, unfortunately that also made me watch everyone sleep while I go bored out of my mind." Frodo nodded as he seen for himself what staying awake while everyone else is sleeping could do. "Can we just talk a while?" Frodo asked as he needed to do something that may help him fall to sleep. Also, not that Frodo would admit it, he was curious about the Gondoran and his background. Frodo knew that Naruto may be able to help put his thoughts in order about this fellowship. Naruto looked at Frodo for a second, gauging his reactions. "Okay, let's head over to that stone, it would be wise to sit." Naruto gestured to a rock formation that was very close to camp so that they did not have to stand. Naruto walked there calmly while Frodo was behind him but still not fully trusting the blonde. Naruto took a seat on a rock where his right leg hanged off while the left was propped up on an outcrop. Naruto noticed that Frodo had sat on a rock that was more like seat, in fact it was the same one that he had used to sharpen his blade. "So Frodo, what is it you want to talk about?" Naruto asked as he looked at the young hobbit. Frodo looked nervous before he started to speak. "Well, he knew a little bit about everyone here, but Yasame Bukani don't know, tell me about yourself." Frodo was normal and outgoing person, but this is the first time he talked to someone that was so heavily armored even the rest of the party wore less armor. "Well, I was found by my father Boromir after an incident." Naruto's face darkens a little at the memory. "My father Boromir is the son of Denethor, the steward of Gondor," Naruto said as he watched Frodo's shocked expiration with a chuckle. "I guess my tale on why I demanded to go with the fellowship started with a dream." Naruto started to clarify. "I saw the white city in Flamesdith all around where I stood, then everything came to a stop and I heard a voice call out to me that I would have to join the ring barrier and a son of a long-forgotten king on their journey. The next day, a message from Rivendell that a council would take place. I had to go." Frodo looked at Naruto in a new light as he had never gotten to know the man and had just thought that he tagged along on a whim for adventure. "Well, that is good to know," Frodo said, the only thing he could think about that. "Well, young ring barrier, you should get some sleep, you do have to rest more than me anyway," Naruto told Frodo as he really wanted to keep everything quiet. No, thought he heard something. Naruto watched intently as Frodo went back to his bed. "All perfect." Naruto quietly grabbed his spear that he had taken with him and looked over to where the noise was coming from. He quietly shifted his position to give him a better strike radius. That was till he hear Gandalf say, "Leave it, Naruto of Gondor thing has a part to play yet he can feel it." "Okay," Naruto replied as he know better than to argue with a wizard. Naruto sat his spear down and decided to look at the night sky while he waited for the others to wake up. Several days later, the fellowship had stopped at this rock formation. Naruto was showing Merry and Pippin how to use the daggers that Aragorn got them. Naruto looked over and saw what appeared to be a black storm cloud. "What is that?" Naruto asked, drawing the attention of the fellowship. "It's nothing, just a whiff of cloud," Gimli said loudly while puffing on his pipe. "It's moving very fast against the wind," Aragorn questions as he walks next to Gimli. "They're spies for the enemy hide," Legolas shouts as everyone ducks into the rock crevasses. "They will be watching this path very closely. No, we'll need a different route. We will take the mountain pass," Gandalf said while turning dramatically and walking off, leaving the fellowship to pack up and follow him. Worst idea ever. Yeah, that is what Naruto decided that the mountain pass had to be. It was cold and not to mention treacherous, as one small misstep could lead to your death. Naruto was currently holding Frodo tight against him to help shield the hobbit from the cold. Naruto may be wearing armor, but the padding underneath would help a lot. "And if please let's go, though the mines that Gimli subjected the hobbits can't take this," Naruto shouted over the winds as they finally heard Frodo's request to go though the mines of Moria. "Well, know what?" Naruto asked as he looked at the rest of the fellowship as they sat next to a lake near the side of the mountain. Naruto had taken to sitting on an old stone while petting his dog. Gimli was next to him shaping his axe and looking around, also wondering what next. "Be patient, we have to wait till nightfall to see the door," Gandalf replied harshly as he seemed to be in deep thought about something. Naruto noticed how his robe seemed to drape over the rocks and wet dirt, never once picking up a speck of dust. However, the hobbits next to the old wizard were adamantly talking away and appeared to be cooking something now that he thought about it was getting hungry. Naruto also looked down and noticed that his hound was staring longingly at the food that was cooking. "Don't worry, we shall go on a short hunt," Naruto told his faithful companion while rubbing the dog's massive head. Naruto stood up and grabbed his spear. Naruto's spear was made from fire-tempered wood with a steel-bladed tip and a counterweight on the bottom that was slightly lighter than the tip. This allowed the spear to be used as either a thrusting weapon or a thrown weapon. "Naruto, are you going hunting?" Legolas asked as he had his bow slung over his shoulder. He looked anxious, and Naruto knew that he wanted something to do as bad as himself. "Yes, indeed I am. If I do say so, your bow would be usefully to aid me in bringing down a deer unless you are not that good of a shot." Naruto made the joke at the end as he has gone on without his friend's witty banter for a while. Legolas smirked knowing that Naruto had the same type of humor that he so loved to use on nearly everyone. "Of course, my bow would be enough to bring in the gamma, but I am worried that your spear might not cut it." Legolas replayed in a tone that was infamous amongst elves. Legolas did not wait for a replay as he started to lead the way into a wooded area that was close with Naruto and the dog in tow. A while away from camp they heard what sounded like shambling rocks. Both Naruto and Legolas knew that rocks do not move by themselves. "You hear that?" Legolas asked as his elf eyes pick up more than any man could. "A deaf man could hear that, Legolas." Naruto replied as he gripped his spear in both hands, cursing that he did not bring his shield. They both tensed as the rocks got louder. Only to relax when they realized that it was just a mountain goat. Naruto almost casual throw his spear at it. It did hit its target in the side of the goat's chest. The bad that the hunt ended so quickly. Legolas committed as the animal fell dead. Naruto smiled at Legolas before running off to check his kill. After making sure the animal was dead, both Legolas and Naruto carried it back to camp where it would be cleaned and served to the rest of the fellowship. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.